Hello everyone. As part of our ongoing COVID-19 coverage, I'd like to welcome you to this exclusive Q&A session. Through these interactive Q&A sessions, we aim to bring you the latest insights, guidelines, and best practices from the country's leading health authorities, while also sharing some of the steps that we're taking at SBT Alliance to combat the spread of COVID-19. Our goal is to share our experiences and best practices in an effort to help you, our industry partners, manage this ever-changing situation and ensure business continuity as we look to a future beyond COVID-19. In this Q&A session, I'm joined by SBT Alliance Executive Vice President Adam Mayse. Mr. Mayse is a 25-year manufacturing veteran and heads up all of SBT Alliance's manufacturing and logistics efforts. Let's hop into the interview. Adam, morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good morning to you and to all.
Yeah, well, thank you for hopping on the call today and digging into a little bit of the steps that we're taking here with SBT Alliance. For some of those of you that aren't aware, SBT Alliance does have a manufacturing arm, which is our division Integrated Advanced Controls. And under Adam's purview, he's really in charge of that manufacturing facility. So we wanted to take a look at the status of what's going on with the manufacturing facilities of the world and essential businesses and CDC recommendations, and dig into some of the steps that IAC is taking to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. So first off, Adam, let's take a look at how is everyone holding up at the plant amid all of this kind of chaos that's going on.
Well, I think all things considered rather well. First I'll apologize that we're meeting under these circumstances. You and I were last together in February, and at that time we had talked about meeting together at our manufacturing facilities in Tijuana, Mexico, and doing an interview there.
Yes.
And so here we are now 6 weeks later, and so much has changed. So here we are now doing this telephone interview to at least be able to update you with what has changed over the last 6 weeks, and specifically the upgrades and the changes in policies and procedures we've made at the factory to better protect our workers.
And with that, according to the CDC, they're recommending that employers should, plan to respond to COVID-19 in a flexible way and be prepared to refine their business response plans as needed. And, based on this guidance, which seems a little bit vague, what are the steps that Integrated Advanced Controls has taken to ensure flexibility?
Well, I was just checking the numbers this morning for Baja California Norte, which is the state of Mexico where our Tijuana facilities are located. There currently, as of today, there's 111 positive COVID-19 cases, but more importantly, there are still 0 deaths in that region. The changes that we started making in early March initially were met with probably, if not resistance, at least some suspicion. A lot of folks wondered if these sorts of policy changes were necessary, if perhaps we might be a little bit paranoid. But as things have progressively gotten worse, particularly the press coming from the United States and the Northeast New York area in particular, people now get it and understand that this is something to be taken seriously, and that while fortunately Baja California has been relatively unaffected to date, they know that it's going to be the actions that they take now that will prevent something far worse from happening in the future. Now to answer your question, we've got 3 goals at the facility, which I would think maybe be classified as the flexibility that we've done. But the 3 principal goals that we've set forth is to first reduce the transmission possibility among the employees. The second one, we're trying to maintain a healthy business operation, and at the same time trying to maintain a healthy work environment for our people.
As we're going through all of the different research that's out there and the guidelines and recommendations, the CDC also makes mention of OSHA's guidance for employers on classifying worker exposure of COVID-19. These OSHA classifications range from very high to very low, caution ratings. In our experience, how did the IAC plant correspond our risk profile against that of OSHA's?
Correct. First and foremost, because our facility is in Mexico, we don't specifically or aren't bound by OSHA regulations. Now, having said that, the Mexican government has its own agency in Mexico itself, because the government and the Maquiladora program, and that the unions that oversee the personnel in that area they're very cognizant of the fact that they have to go above and beyond what would be considered minimal practices in the United States. Mm-hmm. They have to prove to the world that they are a first-rate organization, and that not only do we manufacture and add value to products in a very efficient and cost-effective manner, but that we go to great lengths to promote the general welfare of the workers. And I did mention before, it is a union shop, and so we are working with the unions in the area to ensure that that our people are properly protected and well represented. So we are aware of what the rules are. We also do serve a great number of U.S. customers who do follow OSHA regulations and expect that our factories and the other warehouses at least adhere to, if not exceed, those regulations.
As a manufacturing facility, right, we're typically filled with a lot of workers on varying shifts, so how does the IAC facility plan to, ensure the proper recommended social distancing measures?
Sure. Well, at this point, we've got, I think, just shy of 100 direct and indirect workers at our locations. And the first thing that we did was split those groups up. Normally, we operate in fairly dense areas and everybody on first shift. But we had the luxury to be able to split those shifts out and start staggering people as much as possible. And then we also have the benefit, for those who haven't had an opportunity to see our campus, it's a completely enclosed manufacturing area where we can control ingress and egress to the property. And as such, we now have our guard stationed at the front who is registering everybody who comes in and goes out. And at that time, when anyone comes in, that guard is doing a quick spot check of their temperature using the approved that laser thermometer tool that is so well known in China. And we are also at that point then handing out the proper masks and gloves and assigning them or working them to the stations, bringing them to their areas so that they don't have too much of an opportunity to intermingle or to be in an area where they're not necessarily assigned, just to try to reduce the amount of cross-pollination, if you will, between the people. We've set up temporary cleaning stations at each of the plants so that all the workers are to wash their hands at the beginning of each shift and at any point in time when they either leave their cell, to use the restroom or go have lunch or take their breaks or what have you. So the heavy enforcement of both the comings and goings. The company is providing them with the necessary PPE that they use during their operation. Even at the restrooms and at the wash sinks, at the even the vending machines, we've set up lines, much like you see here in the States, where everybody's being encouraged to stay 6 feet apart. Doing the same thing with them. We're keeping everybody 1.5 meters apart. Right. There are lines on the floor to indicate exactly that sort of distance, so that just also is a reminder and encourages everybody to not huddle together anytime when there might be an opportunity to get together. Let's see, a few other things. All the doorways, essentially, we haven't removed the doors, but they are all wedged open. We're trying to reduce the occurrence where anyone would need to be touching doorknobs or handles.
That's smart.
We're blessed in that part of the country to have pretty mild weather. So at this point, all the doors are open. I'm talking the dock doors and any large entryway doors and things like that. So we've got a good bit of airflow. It's a very pleasant climate, and there really isn't a need for anyone to be in an enclosed space or be touching anything that isn't directly related to their function.
So based on, that, Adam, all these newly implemented mitigation measures, how are the employees adjusting to them? Do they find them burdensome? Are they welcomed? Kind of what's the sense on the ground?
Well, I was speaking with the plant manager and the director of operations at the facility yesterday, and the mood has changed. People are taking this much more seriously. Not only certainly they're well aware of the fact that this is affecting a lot of people economically, and that's a principal concern. But they're also very concerned about the health and welfare of their own families.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the areas where we are in not only trying to educate our people about what can be done at the facility, but trying to help spread that gospel to their lives at home. At our location, there aren't many people who have vehicles and drive to work. So most of our workforce either takes local transit or takes taxis to the facilities. So there's an opportunity where we need to make sure that they have not only the proper gear when they're at the facilities, but we are now, for all of those employees, sending them home at the end of each day with a supply of masks, with our own supply of hand sanitizer and what cleaners we can, to not only encourage them to continue these practices on their way home, but also something that they can bring back to their families as well.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to that, looking back at the operations of the facility, all these measures that have been, put in place, have we seen an impact on the production of output at the IAC plant with all of these measures in place?
Well, yeah. I think if you measured it by the efficiencies, we normally have what's called standard work, and we know to make a part A, it takes 30 minutes of labor. Those efficiencies certainly have gone down. So that is a financial price to pay. On the other hand, we feel that the things that we have done, and through these changes, through our education, we've taken this information, we've presented it to the local maquilador administration and to the unions and to the local governments. We're showing them that if done correctly, one can continue operations. It's just as important to take care of the people and their families financially as it is to help support them on a health basis. And as such, we are cautiously optimistic that these are the right things to do to get us through the next several weeks, but also probably it's going to be a common practice for the many months to come. But it's a steady state sort of situation where we feel that we will be able to operate in a successful way, but also with a good conscience.
It looks like we're actually coming up to the end of our time here. So I did want to thank you again for taking the time to join us today, Adam. It was a pleasure, speaking with you and learning more about, what steps the factory down in Mexico is doing to ensure the health and safety of all of our, employees. So thank you for taking the time today.
Well, you are very welcome, and everyone is welcome to come on down once we're allowed to get out of the house, and we'll get together and celebrate.
That sounds great. I think that would be wonderful. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Well, that does it for this Q&A session. We hope you found today's discussion helpful and are able to take away some key points that you can implement in your organization starting today. As a complement to this Q&A session, we also have a new e-guide that's hot off the press, Essential Businesses and Workplace Safety Amid COVID-19. You can find this e-guide on our website, sbt-alliance.com, or use the link below. Thanks for joining us, and remember, stay safe and be well.